So our Prime Minister can spend $6,000 of your money every night for a hotel room in London while he's in a bar braying about the Queen's death. And he's silently telling people in NATO that we will never fulfill our commitments. Dan McTeague is a long-term Liberal MP, no longer. Joins me right now. You know all about NATO and military spending, though. And Canadians, it's the first time I think they've ever heard it, via the Washington Post, you said, right?
Amazing.
That we aren't going to have it.
Yeah, it's amazing we have to hear this from the Washington Post rather than our own Prime Minister or our own media. That's not a slight on them. But if the Prime Minister is saying that very quietly, off record, or perhaps in certain circles, it's certainly now become absolutely clear to all of our allies that Canada is not willing to fulfill its obligation in any way, shape, or form. Little wonder our members, our friends, the Five Eyes, aren't willing to do work with us. Mix that in with the controversy over Canada's potential involvement, or having been had the Chinese government involved in some of its affairs, some of the affairs of its members of Parliament. We're walking into a very, very dark area here, and I think the Prime Minister is duty-bound to explaining that, not that I expect him to.
No, but I mean, there is intelligence that China is working in the Arctic. They have no land up there, but they go through Russia. We aren't doing anything about it. We don't even really know about it. We get our intelligence from others, but they stop sharing it with us. So, really, how can the Trudeau government be concerned about gender-neutral uniforms for our armed forces, spending money on that, and not fulfill our obligations? Finland is joining NATO, and they're going to be right up to spending their commitment.
I think a world saying of Canada, get real. Get with the program and stop this nonsense of virtue signaling and this idea that somehow you can prance our way through all this nonsense. Look, either Canada has an obligation and it will fulfill that obligation with NATO, or it won't. The declaration, I think, has to be pretty clear. If you haven't got the money, fine. Why don't you have the money? Because you got $14 billion for Volkswagen to come here to make some batteries and apparently create 2,000 or 3,000 jobs, not 30. So if you have that kind of money sitting around, why aren't you doing something in an environment where geopolitically the tensions have never been greater?
But that's a clear choice, though, because we have the money sitting around. The Prime Minister can tax it, and he gives it back, which is a terrible waste of experience in Ottawa for people to say, okay, you gave us this, here you go. It's like a stipend out of socialism.
Canada's Prime Minister doesn't value international security. And that's another knock on someone who obviously isn't ready for prime time, never was.
Well, I think that Canadians are starting to realize that, but he's gotten away with it for 8 years now. And so, really, are you saying that the Prime Minister is showing that he is unfit for office?
Not just unfit for office. I don't think he cares. It's more important for him to travel around the world, swill back, Perrier and eat canapes than to actually deal with the affairs of the world that the world truly wants. It's all about the image, the signal. But I'm sorry, socks, sobbing, and selfies don't cut it in a world in which there's difficulty. Can't
be said better than that. Dan McTeague. You heard it here. Justin Trudeau is now on the record as saying that social media is destabilizing, and he wants to bring in censorship to determine what can be put on and not on social media. That is wrong. Please support this station. And please add your address so I can write you a letter and thank you for supporting freedom of speech.